You are listening to the People Centric Podcast, where we talk through the toughest challenges that people face at work and give practical advice to fixing those challenges. Thanks for joining our movement to create workplaces that are happier, healthier, aligned, and empowered by putting people at the center of all that we do.
Hey, People-Centric leaders, it's Stephanie Anderson, and I think we've got a good topic for you here today. I don't know about you, but it seems like people are panicking. Feels like they're panicking just a little bit, and maybe a lot of it.
Everything is fine.
Everything's fine. It's fine. It's like that meme of the dog in the dumpster fire, right? Everything's fine. And we're recording this on a certain day, and you may hear this weeks or months later. And hopefully, maybe things feel less panicky by then. But today, it just seems like people are panicking, and it's not just the state of the world. We work in a lot of companies, and it just feels like people are on edge and they're panicking. And so maybe in a little contrast to our last episode, which if you didn't listen to that, kind of like reasons to celebrate, what do you do when you really are like, wow, everyone around me is panicking. Maybe I'm panicking. And what the heck do you do? Because everyone's coming and telling me the sky is falling. Here's what's happened. And maybe I'm looking at it and saying, wow, those are some really good points, right? That is happening. Those things are true. What do you do? And so we wanted to have a conversation about this today to really say, like, let's break down what's happening in that moment. If you as a leader and are in a room and there's panic, or your team is panicking, or maybe you're panicking, what's actually happening, and why does your response really impact the team? And again, I know you're like, it's because I'm the leader. But I think there's specific things that are happening that our team kind of broke down that we wanted to talk about and maybe help you if you feel like you're in this situation where you're like, just the sky is falling, everything's on fire. What do I do? How do you give a good response or a better response in this situation? So on the podcast with me today, I have Diana and Bethany. So I'm excited to hear both of your thoughts because you're totally calm, right? No panicking?
There's panicking over here. There's a small child with me. She's panicking. But
oh no, maybe we can give you advice on how to lead that better.
That would be great.
I feel like we're going to owe your children like a royalty. They were not paid actors for this podcast, but maybe they should be. Poor kids. But
definitely. Yeah. Well, let's not, we don't have to put anything in writing yet, but maybe we should.
Well, we'll see what the response is to know what the kids are due. I mean, probably at least a cookie. We'll give everybody that. So, which is our first solution to panic. Snacks. People love snacks. Just feed them. It'll make them happy.
A lot of my panic comes from hunger, so I think that's valid.
Yeah. Well, okay. In all honesty, when our team was thinking about this, and when we think about the panicked calls or meetings we've been a part of recently, it made us all really think about what followers need. And I think we've talked about this on a podcast before. If you've sat in one of our workshops, you've maybe heard us say this, is there's some pretty clear research out there about what followers actually need from their leaders. And it can kind of be boiled down to 4 key words. It's trust, hope, compassion, and stability. Trust, hope, compassion, and stability are what people need from their leaders. And so we were saying, like, actually, when there's panic, you can think about those 4 things, and probably one of them drops for you as a leader. Like, when you're stressed, you are not operating at your best self in those 4 things. And what we often see or what we experience is that one of those things probably drops for you more often. And so we thought we would just talk through each one of those four things and like what does it look like when you drop, hope? And like what would that response sound like? And how can you combat that? So first, just to open the floor, full transparency of those, which do we feel like
Oh
either we
man.
dropped the most or we see dropped the most?
Okay, well, I'll fall on the sword and just say that I think when stress or panic happens, I am more likely to drop hope and compassion. I'm gonna make sure that you guys still trust me because I'm a trustworthy human and I'm on top of things. So I think you'll feel very high level of trust. And I think you'll feel stable because I'm gonna be like a steady Eddie, right? I am gonna grind and do the things that need to happen, but I am not going to be very compassionate about it. And I will also not shine a hopeful light. There will be no joy. It will be very real. So I think that's where I was kind of like, okay, if we're talking about stress, I'm the first to admit that I drop hope and compassion hard.
Mm, yeah. I mean, same. I don't know. I have always felt like I am calm in an emergency
Mhm, mhm.
situation. So like, yeah, for me, the stability is really there. I will, tie up my boots and get it done. Like you can rely on me to find the solution. So absolutely, I think I do the trust. I will give a pep talk from time to time. I will, like, so like maybe on the hope, or at least I'll be like, hang in there. We're gonna make it through a minor pep talk. I think for me, the one that drops is the compassion as well, because I'm either like, get out of my way and I just will solve this, or it's like, buck up, buttercup, which was a common phrase in my house growing up. We're just like, you just got to buck up and we're just going to make it through it. And like, I kind of don't really care that it's hard because it's hard for everyone and I don't want to hear about it. But
Yeah. And then I'll speak to the other side for, this is a good example of people who drop compassion and hope. But I think there are a lot of people when panic happens, they drop stability and they start choosing to do weird things. Like
yeah.
I saw a leader one time who like the whole system was down and they couldn't deliver the thing they needed to deliver. And the leader started cleaning stuff. It was like, that's a weird place for you to be, emptying trash cans and like wiping down counters. I'm confused as to why that is what you wanted to do. But okay. But in that leader's mind, they were like, I'm being very compassionate. I'm out here with them
Hmm.
while the
Yeah, like
team
I'm
is
taking out the
fixing stuff.
trash while you are trying to solve the problems.
Totally. So it was like, I'm building compassion and I'm showing you that I'm part of you and I'm going to be here if you need something. But the stability wasn't there. And I saw some of the other people, the employees, look at this leader and just be like, what are you doing, man? This is not helpful.
Yeah.
This is not, and it kind of made them waver a little bit on the like, am I safe? Right. It immediately went to am I safe with this leader at the helm? This feels wrong.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and I think that when certain things drop, it calls into question what's going on for real.
Oh, I totally agree with that. That's such a good example. I was thinking about the logic, like when logic drops, because that was one, even as we were preparing for this, I kind of even said to our team, like, what does that look like? Is it just like if you can't beat them, join them? Which I have seen that before, right? Where
Yeah.
like you see the leader and everyone around them is panicking. And so they're just like, oh no, if everyone else is panicked, then I should be panicked. And then we get like crazy frantic calls from people that they're just like, the sky fell. It really
Yeah.
did happen. And sometimes it really did. But I think often like what the loss of logic looks like is then, yeah, leaders, they let the panic get the better of them and they start making decisions that may not be like horribly wrong necessarily, but like that really don't make sense to the situation. So
Yeah.
we like, you know, we start discounting stuff that maybe we really don't need to discount to try to get more sales in the door, or we start spending money on things because we're like, well, we need to generate this and we need to do X, Y, and Z. So we're just going to rip the Band-Aid off and we're going to spend all of this money to get there and to get the tools, to get the product, to get the system, blah, 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 blah. Which really, if you could take a step back and remove the emotion, you're like, that's so illogical. You should be hoarding cash right now.
Yeah.
You should be watching every penny that leaves, or, oh my gosh, no, you should actually be charging more because that takes your team so much time to do. And so I think that's where like the logic is, like they just start grasping for solutions and they take any solution that comes their way without really thinking through, will this solution hurt us in any way? They kind of lose that filter and it's just like, well, that could make us a buck. Or this could make the situation better today. This would make that person happy today, and don't really think through maybe the unintentional consequences or the longer term consequences of those actions and those decisions.
Yeah. And I love how you said like the logic drops. We were also talking a little bit about in these moments when everyone's panicked, how sometimes authenticity can drop, right? So like, you're no longer getting the real version of me. Now you're getting that boss costume, which we've also done an episode on. But now I'm putting on this costume where I'm trying to be what I think a leader should be instead of who I really am. And I think that causes a lot of confusion for people when you all of a sudden see a different version of someone just because they're stressed.
It's ironic, right? Because I think people are intending to try to build trust with their team because they're trying to prove something. But it just doesn't work. People just see through it.
Yeah, they totally do. Because, yeah, well, it's like, wow, you were one way today. And especially, I think, even the moments where maybe we saw it coming. And maybe you as the employer, like, I tried to flag this for my leader, or we tried to talk about it, and everybody was like, it's just, we don't need to be concerned about that today. That's I'll jokingly say something to him like, that's next week Stephanie's problem, right? Or that's tomorrow Stephanie's problem. But now I am tomorrow Stephanie, and we are the next week us, the next year us, and now that thing has happened. And so, yeah, it does feel like you're lacking like that authenticity. You're lacking some of the empathy, which is, I think, where like hope and compassion kind of collide, of that empathy to the situation, and that we all are maybe going through something challenging. And this does impact a lot of different people on our team. Yeah, I think it's just, it's easy in those moments to lose sight of one of these things. And I think, it's a good self-reflection as a leader to like think through those four, like, again, hope, trust, stability, compassion, like which one drops away most often for you, and kind of having like an honest look at yourself of like, I don't like that my answer is the compassion. Like, I don't like that answer, but I know if I take an honest reflection back, I'm like, yeah, when I'm super stressed and it feels like things are falling apart, like I'm not as nice about it. And I kind of miss the moments to like check in on people, or maybe not just get straight to the point in the meeting and be like, all right, enough chit chat, let's just get it done. Right. But it's the awareness that I do that, so that way I can start noticing it and do it differently.
Yeah. And I always I think about it more so in the terms of like when my friends are panicking, right? When my colleagues are panicking, when my peers are panicking. I think as a leader, I try not to think about panic, right? I'm like, no, we're just going to keep moving forward. But I think as like a colleague, I want to fix it. And so then I'm like, okay, if hope is actionable, if compassion is actionable, if trust is actionable, and if empathy are actionable, how do I make sure I'm doing all of those things? And some of those words don't really sound like actions, but I totally think that every one of them is. Like, I think that hope is an action, and you can't just like give a pep talk and it be hopeful, right? I think it's, what do we do next? And where are we going to go together? And how can I help you? I think the same with compassion. I can commiserate, but if I'm not trying to actively do something to show that I am compassionate with you and I understand where you are and I meet you where you are, then compassion flies out the window. So I kind of try to think of it as like, what am I going to do in each of these things to make sure that I'm showing them and make sure that I'm aligned with the people who are next to me and going through this with me.
Yeah, that's really good. And maybe we can like break those down a little bit of like by each one of like what do you do to show in a panic stability, hope, compassion, trust? Like what do you do? What do you do? Help.
Well, one of my questions, I guess, was, and full disclosure, because there was that panic child on my lap earlier, I did step away from it, so hopefully I didn't miss this. But when you talk about hope specifically, my question is like, what if if you're the leader and like it really does seem hopeless? Like, how do you respond with hope in those moments?
Yeah. Well, and I think that happens to a lot of us. I mean, I keep bringing up COVID. It was years ago, but like COVID felt hopeless for a while. You know, there were days where it was like, no, none of us are going to make it out of this, right? And I've probably read too much science fiction, but it felt really scary some days. It was like, oh my gosh, we're going to end up in this bleak dystopian place where everything is rusted out and we no longer have technology and connection and all of these things, right? There were moments of that. And I think for hope to be actionable, it is okay, let's take a minute. Let's see what is on the horizon and what we can change. All of the stuff that has happened in the past, you can't change. And all of the stuff that happens in the future, you can. That's where you can affect it. So what are the future things you want to get to? And how do you break that down and show someone like, okay, if this happens, we can address that if and when it happens. But right now, this stuff is happening. So let's address what we're going to do with that, right? Instead of thinking about the past and reflecting on that, or thinking too far into the future and reflecting on that, you got to kind of say like, what's happening in this moment and what can I do to affect this moment?
Yeah, and like who do we want to be in this moment? I think too is like we might be in a really bad place. We might be in a bad situation. And sometimes the hope is just like holding on to your values and saying like, well, we said we were going to be people who spoke truth, who made an impact. You know, I'm using two of our values words. And so like, how do we just be those people today? And what would it look like if we really lived out our value of impact? And that might mean that we don't have control. It might mean may not have a lot of influence to this, but in what way could we show that just like today? And I think, yeah, I really like how you frame that, Diana. Because, yeah, a lot of times, like, the pep talk isn't going to cut it. And people see through that, like, so quickly. Like, if you're just trying to, like, amp people up, it's not going to work. But if you can talk to people about, like, let's remember who we are and why we're here today and, like, what can we influence?
Yeah, I think the part of, like, what can we influence when I was thinking about this is that, like, I think sometimes in the hope category, when it does feel really hopeless, it's like break it down, like make it smaller, make the hope, like the time frame for hope a little bit smaller. So it's like, hey, what are we going to do today? Like, what's our goal today? Hey, here's what we have going tomorrow. Like, this is what we're going to do tomorrow. Hey, this is what this week looks like. And I think it's like, if you can just break down the hope into smaller chunks, then maybe I think that is one way to help create more hope in this times where it doesn't feel so hopeful. Also, I think all of these things we know that like with these 4 basic needs is that we're all going to show up differently here, because we know that in strengths-based leadership, the way that we show these things depends on our own individual strengths. So I might personally break it down. I might break down hope that way and say, here's what I would do to show my people hope, is I'm going to break it down into smaller bite-sized goals and say, or milestones or things to look forward to or whatever it might be. But like Diana might do that differently. She might remind us who we are, right? Or, whatever it might be, that might look a little bit different for all of these. So.
But I also love how when you're trying to build hope, you're also doing the other things in this list, right? I think when you're trying to figure out how to make people hopeful, you're also being really compassionate and you're building trust and you have stability there, right? It's creating stability. So I think the hope part of this is also building the rest of it.
Totally agree. Because, if I've come in and I've like established that I am a leader you can trust and I'm going to be who I say I am, which is like that stability and authenticity, then it's easier to practice the hope because my words and actions reflect that, right? Like, I think, if you find yourself in a panic as a leader and now you're starting to do things that you just would never do before, that should be a flag. And it's not to say that you shouldn't try new strategies. That's not what I'm saying at all. Like, you might need to try different strategies you've never tried before to get out of whatever panic we're in. You might need to do things differently within your business or your company, but you should still be you through that process. And if you feel like you're putting on like the boss costume in order to make those decisions, then like you're lacking that stability for your team because they don't know then who's really walking in the door every day or who's going to show up in this meeting. Is it going to be the Stephanie you've worked with, for however many years, or is it going to be like this intense firefighter like authoritarian style person that really, again, like is not me. It's not really who I am. And so I agree with you. I think that's why all of these things tie together, and you kind of can't do one without the other if you're doing it well, but it's being aware that like probably one of these is going to feel like you can just naturally let it slip off in a panic. And what we're saying is, I think if you're just a little intentional to be like, who are we? Why are we here? And what are we trying to accomplish? That it's easier to practice the, hope, compassion, stability, trust, even in a moment of panic.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think sometimes like don't overthink some of these things, but I think that it's sometimes it's just a little bit easier than what you might think. So sometimes it's like if it's building trust, like maybe you have to, like maybe it is taking a minute and like being honest about like the current situation and saying like here's what is really happening, right? And then it's like for compassion to be able to say, I think when we talked about like dropping compassion that you guys mentioned at the beginning, right? Like sometimes it's again, I think about parenting a lot, right? So if my kids are in a panic because somebody's hurt, somebody's bleeding, it's pandemonium, right? Like if I don't acknowledge the blood and like that they got hurt and I'm just trying to fix it, even though I'm like, I'm going to fix it, everything's fine, I'm going to go to, but if I don't stop and say, hey, I know that hey, I know you hurt yourself. It looks like you're bleeding a lot. You're going to be okay. Here's what I'm going to do. Right. And it's the same with adults in those situations, to be able to say like, you can jump in and start trying to solve the problem. But if you don't stop and say, hey, I know you're scared. I know you're frustrated. I know you're worried about this, or like, tell me what the thing is that you're most worried about. Like it just goes a long way. And then creating that stability, the thing that I don't know if we've said yet, and maybe you guys did and I didn't hear it. One of the things I don't think we've said yet is to like bring other people in. I think with the stability is like, you don't have to solve the problems yourself. Like make sure you're inviting the rest of your team in to help solve the problems and say like, let's create like whatever solutions we can together. Let's put all of our brains together.
I love that because I feel like you just totally hit like the logic part of this, right? Is like, yeah, like we have to be real about the situation. We're like, yeah, you're hurt. We are hurt. I am hurt. That is really what's happening. We're not like doing a toxic positivity thing here and just pretending like everything's fine. Like it is hard. This is really happening. But I like how you tied all of those things together with logic, because if you're being logical in this situation, you should be being compassionate. You should be a stable, like consistent person, and sharing with your team, like, here's what I think we need to do. And absolutely love your point at the end too of like, yeah, logic is most powerful in groups of like, let's use the power of our collective intelligence in this moment to say like, who has a good idea, and not just like sequester ourselves as leaders in our offices and then come out and be like, I've figured out what we're all going to do. And then like everybody on your team just stares blankly back at you, because some of them probably agree with you and some of them probably disagree with you, but you could bring them in on this to help you solve it. And I think that's another huge piece of honestly like the hope is that we're not doing this alone. Like you aren't operating in as much isolation as you might feel you are in a leader in that moment. Like when you are the leader and everyone's panicking, it feels so isolating and so lonely. And I think that was a great reminder, Bethany, that like you're really not alone in this unless you choose to be alone in it.
It's a really great reminder. Yeah. And I also love that you kind of spoke to being a human, right? Like just because you're a leader doesn't mean you don't have to stop and be human and be you, right? You can't put on the leader costume and be like, now I have to do these things because that's what it says about leadership. Like you do have to be a human and you do have to like empathize and compassion and breathe for a minute and bring other people with you and do it together.
Definitely. Well, gosh, I think this was good. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm like, I liked this. So I know this is maybe a little bit of a shorter podcast, but we're talking about this and just how everybody's feeling and what we're hearing from people right now. And it felt like this might be a timely topic. So appreciate you both, Diana and Bethany, for throwing your thoughts and your compassion and your hope and trust and stability onto this topic. We hope it was really helpful for you today. And yeah, if you have questions or you're struggling through one of these right now, like reach out to our team. Like maybe we can help be your brain trust on like how do you practice those 4 things in a moment of crisis or when everybody's panicking. We'd be happy to be a listening ear and a sounding board for you. So reach out to us. We love to hear from you guys. And thanks so much for listening. We'll see you back soon.
Thank you for listening to the People Centric Podcast. We are so grateful for you joining us every week. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Also, feel free to share on your social media with everyone that you know. It really does help us. If you would like to contact us, I have put our information in the show notes. Please reach out anytime. We love hearing from you. We will be back next week with a new topic. Until then, be well and lead well.